while back, we did a D&D one-shot with our great friend Domestic Dan.
Flashback to D&D one-shot happening now.
Should we be stealthy in the middle of the street? Do you think it'd be a good idea if we were quiet in the street?
We were whispering.
Can anybody see us? I mean,
We've always wanted to get into D&D content on the channel, and it's something that people actually also want us to do. It's not just like a thing we want to do, it's like a thing that you are also interested in.
Which is awesome, because
Yeah.
we were super passionate about what was happening, and we were super excited for it, and we might have some more beans later on.
We decided to try a little bit of a thing where we take one of our more experienced players, a la me and Bells, and kind of go over D&D lore and D&D basics with some of our less experienced players, aka Tori and in the future Maddie, and kind of have a fun little like refresher course for those of us who have played quite a bit before, and then a educational experience and like a deeper dive into some mechanics for the people that are just getting into it. We're reacting to a Ginny D video. I love her. She's a great cosplayer.
Today we're going to be watching the 7 things all first-time D&D players need to know.
Boo-boo!
Which is me! That boo!
If you're interested in trying D&D but are nervous about jumping in, or if you yourself are a seasoned
Music in
player
your
but you find
backdrop.
yourself introducing others to the game, then this video is for you. 7 tips for giving newbies
Yay!
advantage on their gameplay check. It's a D&D. Never mind, you'll get it later.
That was very cute. That was a good joke.
I want
Love
to
it.
start by touching briefly on the issue of finding a game. This is the question I get asked the most, and unfortunately I am just not the person to answer it. All my home games have been with friends who either already play or were already interested in starting. I just have no experience here. But from what I can tell, there are 3 main ways to find a group. 1, you can play with friends. Put the word out to your pals that you're interested in playing, and you might find that some others have been considering the same thing.
Especially if you're willing to learn how to DM. That's always the hardest part, is finding a DM. You don't have to write your own campaign. There's so much like good pre-made stuff now that you could even just like run a story that somebody else has already written if you just want to try it.
If you just want to like be like, yeah!
Yeah!
Here
like,
you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of like classic ones too that are really like fun and interesting. There's just so much out there.
I think in
She's
general,
fine.
people enjoy playing it more than being like the storyteller.
Right.
And I feel like that in general is a lot of what people end up wanting to do. But the DM is the most important part.
It's true, and if you're a good DM, then you get to play D&D forever. And also, like, DMs can have not necessarily self-insert characters, but you can make a combat character that you can, like, play with your friends with. You can still have a member of the party. You just have to, like, make sure you don't let your biased knowledge, like, of future events change any of your decisions. Unless you make a character that's, like, deliberately sketchy. And that's kind of fun, too.
You can even start a group with all new players and learn together. 2, you can visit your local gaming store and see if they have tabletop game nights, can connect you with anyone putting together a group, or host Adventurers League games. Or 3, you can use the internet to either find local games looking for players or pick up an online game. You can use Facebook
so many
groups,
online
subreddits
options
like
now.
RLFG, or just post on your social media that you're looking to join a game. Honestly, finding a D&D group is a little like dating. Sometimes you get lucky and you meet the right one really early on, but other
so
times
cute.
you really gotta just do some trial and error to find the right fit. If there's
That's
a cheat
so
code,
cute.
I'm afraid I don't know it. But once you do find or create a group, there are 7 things you can do to make sure you have the best possible experience.
Tell me, what are the 7 things?
What are they?
First things first, try not to panic over the rules. I know they can be overwhelming. Even experienced players and DMs have to look things up sometimes. No one is expecting you to memorize all of the rules for your first session. Or if they are, they're an asshole and you can ignore them.
There's also so many, like, good resources now.
Yeah, there's
Easy-
like mobile
yeah.
apps, there's books, there's...
They even make, like, little flashcards of, like class-specific spells, and you could just have, like, a little deck of flashcards of your class's spells. Like, it's so much more convenient than it's ever been. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where it's easier to get into D&D now than it, like...
It's more accessible.
Yeah, I
than it
love
used to
it.
be.
It's awesome.
Your first session will be easier though if you have a basic understanding of how the game works going into it. I would encourage you to pay attention to your own learning style here. Some people will get a lot out of reading the player's handbook, but others might not really grasp anything until they see it in play at the table. You may want to look up some YouTube videos that explain the basic rules of play, or that guide you through how your
Hands-on
specific
and
class
reading are
works.
just
Personally,
two completely
I learned
different
most of the rules from watching D&D actual play shows, where I got to see them in use. Whatever works for you is the right choice. It's important to understand that the rules are there to facilitate the gameplay, not to define it. You don't have to know, say, how much damage you take if you fall a great distance, or what to roll in order to look for animal tracks. All you have to do is say, I jump out the window, or I want to look for animal tracks, and your DM will tell you what to roll. Your DM is the ultimate arbiter of the rules. Don't be afraid to ask them clarification questions.
Your good DM will also abide by the rule of cool. So if you want to do something fucking rad, they'll figure out a way to let you roll for it.
Yeah.
They'll make it work, whatever it is. If it's awesome and if it fits with the storyline, most DMs don't say no to things.
Yeah.
In fact, there will be times when your DM will override whatever's in the rulebook and make their own call. The rules of D&D can be, and often are, broken. So seriously, don't stress about learning them all. It'll come with time.
What if I'm stressed?
There's also just so many!
Whatever character you end up creating, you will spend hours and hours at session after session inhabiting them, so you'd better pick one that you like. This can vary from table to table, but from what I've seen online and in person, the average D&D session is something like 3 to 5 hours. And unless something gets in the way of the game, it's not unusual to play a single character every week or every other week for years. So ask yourself, what makes you feel excited to play? Magic? Big swords? Being a rich noble? Having a tiny pet dragon? This can be difficult to pin down if you aren't familiar with D&D in general. So I think this is another big argument for flipping through the rulebooks or watching some videos online before you nail down those choices. It's very important that you work with your DM to make sure that your character is a good fit for the game and for you. Be forewarned, many DMs will suggest that new players stay away from spellcasting classes, because if you're already learning the rules of the game, stacking the rules of spellcasting on top can make it much harder. Every DM is going to be different with how they want to handle stuff like this. A good DM will listen if you tell them what kinds of themes and concepts excite you, and help you figure out how to work those into a character that still suits the campaign and your experience level.
The thing about spellcasting is that it just gets so complicated. Remembering like what, when, how often you can do like everything. I know my first like 5 characters were all basically the same, just because I was like, well, I know what I'm good at, and that's standing in the back taking pot shots at people.
Yeah, the ins and outs of like what also a spell actually does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
so
a
that
lot
way
of-
you don't cast like 50 meters of fog inside of a room that's like maybe only 20.
That blinds everyone.
That blinds everyone for 2
including the
turns.
enemy, yes, which was the intent, but like everyone.
But it worked.
It did work.
It did work.
You did do it.
Rule of cool.
Yeah! It was cool!
Let me cast fog in a room and make me unable to see for 2 turns.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the best way to learn is to make a mistake.
If you've never roleplayed before, this part of the game can be really intimidating. Many of us haven't played Pretend in many,
I know, I
many
love it.
years, and it can feel very vulnerable to do it in front of other people. On top of that, representations of D&D in media can give us unrealistic expectations for what roleplay looks like. If you're comparing yourself to a bunch of professional actors, of course you're gonna be nervous, but on a basic level, roleplay is just asking yourself, what would my character do in this circumstance? And then doing that. D&D is not like a video game. It's not like there are preset options to choose between. You can
be so
truly
intimidating,
do pretty
too.
much anything, or at least you can try. If a door is locked, you don't have to find a key. You can pick the lock, you can break it down, you can light it on fire. Combat is a little more structured, and you should pay attention to the details in, say, a spell description. But don't be afraid to ask your DM if you can use your abilities in a creative way. Most DMs will respect the rule of cool
There
and
it
let you try
is.
unconventional things.
There
You're gonna
it
have the most
is.
fun if
Door
you make
with an
big
arrowhead.
moves.
Hell
The best
yeah.
characters to play and to play with are the ones who take action instead of just sitting back and waiting for things to happen to them. This isn't real life. You don't have to be cautious. Take some risks, and I promise you'll have a more exciting game.
Shit like that is what makes D&D special.
And
Like,
exciting and fun.
Yeah, the stupid shit you do when you're just trying something out half the time results in some of the best and funniest like D&D memories you could possibly have. So there's no like harm in just trying weird shit all the time.
The one game that I had before the one that we did with Dan, like I will just always remember because my character was so uncharismatic that I killed someone.
I love that.
And I will forever carry that with my heart.
I love that so much. Yeah, one of my favorite D&D campaigns I ever played, one of my friends played a half-orc who had such a low intelligence stat that he took a negative bonus on everything. And it was so funny. Like everything he rolled, he had to subtract 2.
We love an orc.
It was ridiculous. He was so dumb. It was so funny.
Of course, taking risks means that sometimes you fail, and that's a key part of the game too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most fun and memorable D&D moments
And
come
there
from
it
times when
is!
things go horribly wrong or completely off
And
the
then
rails.
you gotta get
Try to remember
creative.
that failure and chaos are opportunities, and they don't have to make the game less fun. Go with the flow and stay open to whatever direction things take. Listen, I have ADHD, so I get it. Sitting still for 5 hours and keeping focused is hard on
really.
some
Yeah,
days
just
and
get it.
impossible on others, even when you're passionate about the game. But you've got to do your best to stay engaged, because I guarantee you will hate D&D if you're not really paying attention. It's absolutely not the kind of game that you can play halfway. Plus, being checked out during the game is rude to your DM and your fellow players, and it will impact their enjoyment of the game. So put your phone away
Respect.
or put it on the aptly named D&D mode. If having something to fidget with helps you
phone away.
focus, communicate with your DM over that so that they know that you're not being distracted or rude if you're knitting or doodling. And if you need a break to pee or stretch or step outside, ask for one. I find it easiest to stay engaged by actively participating. Plus, D&D isn't very fun if you stay silent for everything but your turn in combat. Get involved, voice your ideas, and take action. And when you're not actively involved, you can stay plugged in by taking notes or planning ahead. By the time it comes to your turn in combat, you should have a good idea of what you're doing. If you're casting a spell, read the whole thing first. Not only is this stuff basic courtesy to the rest of the people at your table, it'll also make the game more enjoyable for you. The more you can communicate with your DM and the rest of your party before the game starts, the better. First of all, they should know that you're a beginner. Not every game is right for a first-time D&D player. Plus, if they know you're new to the game, they can support you throughout the process of creating your character and playing your first few sessions. It's important to know what kind of game you're getting into, particularly when building your character. If this is a group that really demands a smart build, your DM can help you pick a race, class, and stats that will allow you to be effective. If not, you can make choices based more on story and what sounds fun. But whatever the style of the group is, you'll want to match your build to that. Also, the other player characters are going to be your character's companions throughout their adventures, so it's a good idea to get to know them and think about how your character will connect with the others. Remember, you're not the main character of D&D. This is a collaborative storytelling game, and you're part of a team. Less Iron Man, more Avengers. Communication out of character can help facilitate better in-character interactions. 95% of problems that come up at D&D tables can be solved by talking with each other. That's real science. It's not, I just made it up. But it's an informed guess.
It's true about real life and true about D&D.
Yeah, it's like talk to each other.
Yeah.
Everything.
Right. Well, and like, especially with D&D, I feel like, especially because you're role-playing, it is good to like get things like triggers or like things that might be like stressors for you, but you're okay with dealing with. You just have to kind of know about them, or they have to be dealt with tactfully. It's really important to get those like out in a safe space before you actually like are in the middle of a campaign. The DM's planned this big crazy thing that's got something in it that someone really has a hard time with. And if they don't know that, then like they put all the time and effort into building this thing, and then you're all of a sudden like, whoa, this is too much for me.
Like, it's a lot for you.
Yeah. And then just like, people need to know that stuff.
You're living through it. Like your character's living through it, but you are attaching yourselves to it.
Right. And like you get, even if you're not doing like a heavy roleplay campaign, even if you're just being like, my character does this, instead of having to like be in your character's voice all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like you do inevitably still get attached to your character.
Yeah.
Like you built them. You are in control of them. Like you care what happens to them. Like even if you try not to, it's just inevitable.
People often ask what they should get or buy before playing D&D.
Very good
Which
tip.
books, how many dice, what sort of accessories, and I know it's tempting to buy every single D&D item. My first 6 months playing D&D, I hauled this massive overstuffed tote bag to every session. Books, character journals, spell cards, rolling tray, minis, and condition rings and trackers and inspiration coins, and of course, a big old bag of dice. You know what I bring to D&D now? This. Honestly, you don't need much.
Sounds about
All
right.
you really need is a set of dice, and even that can be replaced with a digital dice roller on your phone or computer, or provided by your DM or a fellow player if you're not ready to commit to collecting items for a game that you don't know if you love yet. You don't even need the player's handbook, really. It can be a great reference once you learn to navigate it, but someone else in your group probably has a copy you can borrow, and you can also Google nearly anything, like what is a short rest, or can I cast a spell with a bonus action, or whatever.
That's the great part about like all of the apps and stuff now that have come out, is that like it is just so much more accessible and easier to like search specifics like that.
Yeah.
It's great, and I love having like a physical book. It's like one of my favorite things, and I feel like especially for creating your character, it's like nice to have that like tactile
I'm the same
part
way.
of it. Yeah.
I like physical items. I'm just these are my trinkets.
Right. But then for like double checking specific rules, like, or if you're trying to find something real quick just to be like, okay, I need to remember exactly what this phrase means, the fucking apps are so much easier for that. Or even just like looking on the D&D wiki is so great. Yeah, as much fun as it is to collect like the bits and bobs and stuff, like I know I always used to play with like minis and a mat, but a lot of people don't even do that anymore. A lot of people are just like, you just remember where you are, or it's like a general distance thing, and that's like the DM's like business. So
to keep track of like where you are. Yeah.
You don't even necessarily need like miniatures a lot of the time. It's like really just, as she was saying, like dice, if anything. But like it is fun to get all the little bits because there's so many little bits you can have. Ugh, me too.
I'm just like, ooh, yes,
I
shiny,
love it.
Beautiful.
Just don't forget to tack that 5e onto the end so you don't end up on government watch lists for Googling something like, can you instantly kill a person who is asleep?
That's true. Yeah, please put D&D at the end of your queries if they're that.
If your first session is amazing, that is great, and I am so happy for you. But if it isn't, that doesn't mean D&D isn't for you. Maybe you need a little more practice to feel comfortable in character. Maybe the rules are overwhelming and you need a few more sessions to really get the hang of them. Maybe you're playing with the wrong group. There are more than 50 million D&D players worldwide, and the more time I spend in this community, the more I understand that every single one of those millions of tables plays D&D differently. Sometimes I hear things that make me question if we can even truly say we're playing the same game. It's very, very important to find a group that you vibe with. The wrong group can turn a person off of D&D for life. Everyone prefers different stuff, so a group doesn't even have to be a bad group for it to be the wrong group for you. Even if your first session isn't exactly what you want, if the idea of playing tabletop games is exciting to you, be patient and try it a few times in a few ways, or try a few different games before you give up. There might be a group out there that wants the exact same kind of game that you want, and if not, maybe you can create one.
Wanting to play D&D doesn't necessarily have to mean that you end up playing Dungeons and Dragons, the mechanic. Like, there's so many other pen and paper games that are similar mechanically, but like cover completely different like genres. Like Cyberpunk and fucking, like, Pathfinder is like D&D, but like open source, and they kind of do things a little bit differently.
I've heard that like Munchkin is the same thing.
There's like a pen and paper game for like every genre you could imagine. So
as long as you have an imagination, you can do it.
Yeah. And there's so many options. But I feel like D&D is a really wonderful starting point to like get into that kind of a hobby. And then you can really just like explore from there because the rules are so similar to anything else you're going to find because they really like started it, which is really cool.
I do enjoy how she was just like, hey, if you didn't have like a good first run, like it could just be the people that you're with,
right?
You know, like it could just be based on like communication or, you know, you're just not vibing as a group and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a rule that I have is that you try everything twice because the first time could be a fluke.
That is definitely true. And then if you hate it both times, then maybe
like,
there is, maybe it's not for you.
You're like, maybe whoop.
Maybe whoop. Maybe never again.
Maybe I'll just
maybe
yeah, exactly.
You know the drill by now if you've watched any of our other content. If you like this video, especially since it's a new format, a new kind of thing we're testing out, please like actually let us know. If you have any recommendations for any other good, accessible D&D YouTubers, especially ones that deal with more specific stuff like lore, class deep dives, shit like that, we want to get into all of it if you will watch it. So I would love to hear about them in the comments also.
Yeah, your favorite content creators that do this sort of content, like drop them below.
Yes, absolutely. And we are currently actively trying to get more D&D content on the channel and not just in a React format, but in a like creative format too.
Which is very exciting.
Yes.
And we are all like super excited for it and super stoked about it. So
and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye! May you roll only 20s. Nothing else.
No 12s.
Nothing less. Yeah, no 12s. If nothing else, at least no 12s. 12s are illegal now.